Hi guys, I'm Alex from MUD.clayplay here in beautiful Byron Bay. I'm going to teach you how to make a really cute incense holder. There's Buddy, my dog, who's come to join us. So first things first, we'll just check that you've got everything that you need. So you want your mud ball. So you may have got one off of the website www.mud.byronbay.com. It's just over a kilo of mud in the large mud ball packs, and this is going to make you much more than just one incense holder. So I'm going to teach you that particular shape today, and you can also make many other things. So you've got enough to make a few. So you want your mud ball. That's going to look a little like this, with a couple of instructions on our mud isolation workshops, which is just our little adaptation of our face-to-face Friday night hang time. You want to have one of these guys, so helps for it to be clean. Doesn't have little food bits in it, so you don't get any food bits in your clay. This is what we're going to be rolling out our little slab on. It's just a lot easier for us to peel the clay off of a cloth. Instead of trying to peel it off the board, it can be a little bit difficult. So next is our rolling pin. So if you don't have a rolling pin, don't worry. You can use anything cylindrical. So you could use a wine bottle, you could use a jar, anything like that is going to work just fine. We also want a couple of tools. So you may have bought your toolkit as well off of the website, which would be super handy. But if you haven't, don't worry, I'll show you what to do to switch a couple of these out. So number one is our joining tool. So this is going to be really good for joining everything that we need to one another. So if you are making a cup, for example, great to join the handle. With what we're making today, it's going to be great to just join the components of our shape. This one, we're not going to be using so much today, but I will just explain it. This is actually a trimming tool, but it's really good for decorating as well. So you can see there's a kind of a circular wire here that you can cut little grooves out of your clay, which is a little bit fun. And then last but certainly not least, we've got our scoring tool here. So this is again going to be super good for our joining, but it's also great for cutting as well. So we're going to need this one a fair bit today. I've got a little spray bottle. You don't have to have a spray bottle. It is handy if you do have one though. Just if your clay gets a little bit dry, we're going to be able to just re-moisten it so that it doesn't crack. So if you don't have one of these, just grab a dish with a little bit of water in it. That'll be primo. So as well, you want another little dish. This is just a pinch pot that I made. You want another little dish so that we can make our glue. Our glue is called a slip, and basically it's just wet mud. So I'll show you how to make that in a tick. The other thing that we're going to need for later, if you got the big kit off of the website with everything, you will have gotten your glaze as well. So this is the white speckle. It has like all these little cute freckles in it. If you don't have that, don't worry. There is a list by state under kilns in Australia on the website that you can just click into and have a look at what kiln is closest to you. By no means is that all of the kilns in Australia. If you know of more, let me know. And that will give you a bit of an idea of where you can go to take your shape to be bisque fired. After it's been bisque fired, that's when you glaze, not beforehand. All right, let's get stuck in. This is fun, isn't it? So I'm going to grab my mud and just lay my cloth on the top of my board. You don't have to have a board if you don't want to. You're just really going to need the cloth. I'm not going to need all of this. So I'm just going to pull off maybe a quarter of my clay, of my entire ball. And then what you want to do is you want to just keep this moist. So the way you do that is you just re-wrap it with what was surrounding your ball in the first place. If you don't have that, you can get a damp cloth and then just wrap your mud that way. I'm just going to give mine a little spray and pop it to one side. Groovy. All right, so we've got our little bit of clay here, manipulating it with our hands. So you can just kind of press it down a bit like that. So we're going to be rolling this out, and when we're rolling it out, being really careful not to roll the edges down a lot thinner. What can happen is you can have it thick, 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 and then really thin. We want to maintain a similar thickness all the way across. So what we're going to be aiming for here is a rectangle for the base of our incense holder. Okay. So I'm going to aim for probably about a 1/2 centimeter thickness for this incense holder, and I'm just going to be really careful when I'm rolling it to make sure that I am not rolling it too thin. So I might spin this around and just go like that. How are we traveling? Mine's still a little bit thick, so I'm going to keep going. So you don't have to do a rectangle for your base. You could do any shape that you want, like make it your own. Totally make it your own. Love that. But I'm just going to show you the rectangle version. So there is an example of this on the Instagram, MUD.clayplay, for you to kind of have a look at. Sarah and one of the graphic designer of MUD, but also MUD students, did a really cute version of this that's actually inspiring this entire tutorial now. So mine's actually a really good thickness. I wouldn't want it to be any thinner than that, or it's just going to be too thin and it's going to break in the kiln, and we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I might grab a ruler from behind me. Pretty handy, hey? If you don't have a ruler, don't worry. I don't think anyone will have a ruler unless they're like a primary school child or a teacher, maybe. But if you do, super handy to be able to cut your shape a bit more precisely, but it doesn't matter. We're making wonky shapes, the wonkier the better. Okay, so now I'm going to use my scoring tool just to cut this shape. Any shape that you're making is going to reduce about 20% in the kiln, so just to keep that in mind with what shape you're actually creating, you want to just make it slightly bigger so that it's the desired result after it's been kiln fired. So this doesn't need to be any particular size. You just want to make it kind of wide enough that we can put a couple of shapes so that you can have your incense poking out. I've got a feeling this is going to be good, guys. See, I'm not even measuring that. That's how crazy I am. Doesn't matter. Just go by your eye. But if you really like things to be quite precise, then, you know, measure it. Go for it. It's fine. Do what you need to do. Okay. So I'm nearly done with my rectangle. See? That's all you need. You don't need to pick yours up. I'm just picking mine up to show you guys, but that's similar to what you need, because we're going to be putting two shapes on here. One to actually hold a number of incense sticks that we're not using yet, and the other to hold the burning stick. Cool. So I might just use my fingers. If you want to smooth anything out, like some edges, so for example, these edges along here are going to become a lot sharper in the kiln. And you know, you don't want to cut yourself when you're just trying to burn your incense. So just pop a bit of water on your fingers, and then you can run it along some of these edges, just so that you can make it the tiniest bit more, just softer. Oh, Buddy's coming back. Hey mate, how you going? Bit more water. Okay. And if in doubt, just really curve it, because you certainly don't want it to be sharp. It's not very pleasant. You want to do that on the top of your shape, but also on the bottom. So you might see that the bottom is actually a lot more kind of textured, because you've had that on the cloth. You want to make sure, unless you like the texture, it's up to you. You want to make sure that the textured part of your shape is on the bottom still. So I'm just going to do the same motion all the way around. So this shape that we're making today is actually quite a quick one to do, which is fun. One of my favorite things about clay, other than that we walk on it every day, is that it can be a really therapeutic kind of tool. It kind of forces you to be quite somatic and focus on one thing, so it can be quite a mindful task. So long as you're not getting super frustrated that your shape isn't the way you want it to be, I think it's nice to kind of detach yourself a tiny bit from exactly how you want it to be, because however you think it's going to be, it's not going to be like that. It's going to come out pretty different and probably still pretty cool. So I have just softened the edges of my shape. Hopefully you guys have done similar. And now this is an example of a slab. So what we're doing at the moment is we're just doing a little bit of slab work, which is one of the 3 core hand building techniques. So you've got slab work, you've got coil work, and you've also got pinch work. So where you make your little pinch pots and things like that. So we're using the slab method today, which is great for making bowls. It's also great for making mugs. You can make planters. You can do everything. Everything. Sky's the limit. All right, so I'm just gonna pop this to one side because I want to actually use my scraps here. If you find that your clay is getting a little bit dry, just pop a bit of water on it, not too much. You don't want to drench it, but you just want to pop a little bit of water on it, because as we're working with the clay, we're actually stressing it out a little bit, poor thing. We're drawing moisture from it. So we just need to re-moisten it from time to time. So what I'm doing now is I'm just rolling out my shape again. What I'm trying to achieve here is another long rectangle. So that's what I'm going for. I do need the length because I'm actually going to be creating a cylinder out of this that I can put on my base for all of my incense sticks to stick out of. So I want to make sure that I'm not making any part of this too thin. I want to maintain the consistency and the thickness all the way across. So I'm just going to keep on going, and once again you want it to probably be about 1/2 centimeter. Mine's still a little bit over that, so I'm just going to keep on going just for a little bit longer. Okay, Now, just to test, you can kind of fold it around on itself to see, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That's fine. You don't want the circle to be too big, otherwise the sticks will just be going everywhere. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to use my ruler. You don't have a ruler, you can use the side of this whilst you're cutting. You can use just your eyeballs. Do whatever you want. So I'm just going to slice my shape. Now I'm making it reasonably, I mean, I'm not going to say it's tall, but I'll give you the centimeters. It really doesn't matter how tall you make it. You want it tall enough that it's actually going to hold the sticks. So mine's 5 centimeters, so 5 centimeters tall. Now let me see how that translates to see if I'm happy with that. Okay, so that's my cylinder. That's going to go on top of here, which I'm pretty happy with that. I could have made it a little bit bigger if I wanted to, but I'm pretty happy with that. So now what we're going to need to do is actually join your shape. So we want to make this into a cylinder. We're going to be curling it up and we're going to be joining it here. But before we do that, we're going to need to make a little bit of slip. I told you before we're going to be making a tiny bit of glue, and I wasn't lying. So we want to just get a really, really small, we're not going to need much. You can use one of your scraps, a small amount of mud, pop it in your bowl and just drown it in a bit of water. And then you can use this little guy just to create your, it's called slip, but it's just basically our glue. And we want it to be the consistency of toothpaste. It's like our little bit of butter. So it can take a little bit for it to mix. It's not a very pleasant sound. But we just want it to be soft enough that we are going to be able to use it as a joining agent. Cool. Now, I'll pop that there. Now what I'm going to need to do, you might also notice that there's a little bit of cracking. That's really normal. We're going to be joining that in just a tick. By massaging the cracks out. If you don't massage the cracks out, they're going to accentuate during the drying process. It's not ideal. It's not really what you want. So what we're doing now is we're actually getting this tool here and we are just scoring along here. So I'm doing a bit of a crosshatch motion here. You can see a bit of a crosshatch motion there. And that's actually going to help the two sides lock together. Then I'm going to grab just a little bit of my slip, not too much at all, and I'm just going to run it along one of the edges there. And I am going to need this shaping tool rather. I'm going to press that together. I'm going to use a little bit of force. And then I'm going to use my tool just to pull the mud from one side to the other. Now I want to merge this shape together to make it one cylinder. So we're going to be doing this on the outside, and we're also going to be doing this on the inside of our shape as well. So I'm just going to be grabbing this tool and then going on the inside and doing exactly the same, just pulling mud from one side over to the other. Then what I want to do is I want to score the bottom of it once I'm happy with the join there. So again, you don't need to be pretty with the scoring, you just go for it. I figure out where I want it to go on my shape, and I just make a little marking so I can score there. And similar to before, I use my slip just so that I can lock in the shape. I place my shape on there. And then I want to apply a little bit of pressure downwards. I'm going to put a tiny bit of water on this so that I can start to massage out any of the little tiny cracks that I'm not super keen on. Okie dokie. So now I want to actually reinforce this join, and the way that I reinforce the join is I actually grab a little bit of scrap here and I make a worm. So this does not have to be pretty because we're just using this to join the inside of our shape. Doesn't even matter if it breaks. It is not a prob. So I might just roll out the worm here, and all I want is, it needs to be really, really quite thin, and I'm just going to be using this to join. I might do it in two parts. So I'm just going to drop that on the inside of my cylinder, and I need a tiny bit more to drop on the inside of my cylinder. The reason I want this is because I'm going to use this guy again to actually, now I'm going to show you this somehow. So I've actually put my coil on the inside of this shape here, and I'm going to be using this to go inside the shape, and I'm going to be massaging that coil to actually join those two shapes together. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to massage it on an angle. So I can press that, not too hard, but press that smooth so both the shapes are actually joining together. So I'm just going to pop this down again, and I'm going to start to do that. This is going to reinforce again your shape so that these things are actually sticking to one another, because otherwise the shapes actually just pull straight apart in the kiln. So this is a similar method how you would actually make a mug to join at the inside of the mug if you were using slab work to make your mug, that is. And now I can use my finger and I can just press it in here. Might need a little bit of water. Just press it in here and run it around just to smooth out my shape a little bit. And if you just have a bit of a check-in to see how you're feeling right now, you're feeling frustrated, or you're feeling kind of semi-focused on what you're doing and calm. Because as I mentioned before, it's kind of a play-based method of mindfulness, which if I'm ever like stressed out or anything like that, just play with a bit of clay. Okie dokie. I don't know how you guys are going, but mine's looking okay. Now what I want to do is use this guy once again. So if you don't have this, then you'll just be using a spoon or something similar, and a knife to cut things. But I'm just going to use this just to join really gently the outside of my cylinder super gently to this shape. You can, if you want to, do another coil and lay it on the outside of this shape to do a similar motion. I'm being lazy, so I'm not. I'm just, and I want it quite defined. I want mine quite defined, so I'm just gonna. I'm putting a little bit more water on it just so I can smooth that out a little bit more. Just with my fingers, smoothing out the top again to make sure that I don't have any aggressive edges. And then I'm gonna massage, and I usually massage with like a circular motion. I'm just gonna massage out any of those cracks that are around my shape. So you can see I have made the little incense holder part that can hold all my incense sticks. And now I want to make a little ball over here that I can actually put the burning stick in. So I can do that by using some of, or the rest of my little scraps over here. How big do I want my ball to be? Maybe like the tiniest bit bigger. So you could, out of the over a kilo ball that you have with your mud ball, you can really make heaps of these, or just make a bunch of little bits and pieces. So there are different tutorials on the website as well that you can have a look at that are free, that you can access. So what I'm doing now is I'm just rolling this into a little ball, and I'm actually going to press it down because I want to make it like a little mountain, I suppose. So you see I have a flat portion here, and then I've got a larger portion there. So I want to, I'm gonna still manipulate this a bit more because I want to make it a bit smoother. So I'm just going to use my fingers here to achieve that. And once again, like you join anything, you're just going to score this bottom part of this shape. You could do anything though. You could have a little rainbow. Oh, that's a good idea. We could do a rainbow. That'd be really cute. Yeah, you could do a little rainbow to pop your incense sticks out of. But for now, I'm just going to do the little mound. So I'm just going to pinch this around the edge slightly because I want to be able to join this properly. I really want to be able to have a little bit of clay pinching out here so I can use my joining tool to actually join it to the base. So I'm just going to work on that now, pinching these out. Just gently, you don't need a bunch, just the tiniest bit. I'm pretty happy with that. So once again, using kind of the crosshatch method to score your shape. And the reason that we're doing this just once again is to lock these shapes together. So I wouldn't score just one edge of something and put it on a flat base. I would score both of those surfaces so they can lock together. So that's why we want to kind of figure out where we're going to be putting things so that we can score that as well. And I'm going to grab a little bit of my glue once again and then press my shape into the center here. So you can see, I might turn my shape on the side, just so you can see. I've got my holder, and then I've got my little mountain here. And I'm going to use this guy once again. I'm going to press this with a little bit of force without damaging the shape. But now I'm just going to use this little guy to pull the mud to the base. How fun is this? Now you don't have to go to the shops to buy these things. You can just make them all yourself. How good. So, if you don't get clay from our website, that's absolutely fine. You may already have your own clay, or you may be sourcing clay just locally. So of course you're still able to access all of our free things, all of our free tutorials. So now I'm just smoothing this out with my finger. Pretty happy with that actually. And I need to make my little hole now for my incense. So I'm going to do that directly into the top, and I'm going to wiggle it around just a little bit, because once again, these are going to just shrink ever so slightly. And it doesn't really matter if you make these holes just a little bit big, because you could pour a little bit of sand in there and your incense stick will still stick up. So it's better for it to be just tiny bit, just so slightly bigger than smaller, because you're not, once it's turned to stone, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. So I'm just making that with the tip of my pointy, I mean, what would you call this? I call it a scoring tool. But if you don't have a scoring tool, what you can use is, if you've got one of those little like skewers, you can use that as well. It functions the same, but anything that's just pointy, just to make that little circular hole that you want to achieve. So I have pretty much done my shape. How are you guys going? So once again, if you've got any little cracks or anything like that, you just want to gently, not using too much water, just gently massage those out. But there you have it. You've got your own little homemade, handmade incense holder. How cool. And all your little sticks can go in there. Once again, you can access our tutorials on www.mud.clayplay.com, and you can just, you know, play every second Friday night in the isolation tutorials during isolation. And just to remind you, this is a mid-fire BRT clay. That's really important to tell to your kiln operator. So the reason you want to tell them that is because otherwise they're not going to know what temperature to fire it at. So a mid-fire, this is going to be bisque fired at about just over 1,000 degrees. So you can't use your oven, sorry, no. Or put it in a fire, don't do that either. Definitely take it to a kiln, which you can find the locations on our website. This is really delicate. This is now going to be in its first drying phase. I'm going to take it out of the studio and put it inside, out of the elements. So out of the sun, wind, rain, all of that sort of stuff, because I want it to dry through really evenly. If I left it out here, it'd probably crack because it's getting sunlight on one end and shade on another. So we want it to dry through really evenly. And just to remind, it is mud, so it is so delicate, like a little baby. So you want to treat it that way. So when you're transporting it to the kiln, You want to make sure that you're just patting it out a little bit with like a towel or a bit of, a bit of bubble wrap or something like that. Once it's been fired through once, it's basically stone, so it's a lot more sturdy. And then you can actually use your glaze to just paint it wherever you want the glaze. You've got the instructions on here. If you don't have this glaze, you can source glaze elsewhere. You just want to follow the instructions. This is a cone 6 glaze. That's really important for the kiln operator to know as well. So cone 6 white speckle glaze. It's going to come out a little like that. So that's kind of your speckle effect that we're going for. And then you want to make sure also that you don't glaze the bottom of your piece. If you glaze the bottom of your piece, it's going to stick to the kiln shelf, and that is a bad time. So we want to make sure that you're just glazing the upper part of your work. So for this glaze, it's 2 to 3 coats, just up the top. And then you'll get the beautiful speckle effect kind of come through. And then you'll have your beautiful finished product made by your own hands. Thank you so much for having a play with me today. And I hope to see you soon. Bye.